Alright guys, this is Reptile. Thank you for checking out my video. This is part 2 in my multi-part video series on how to paint up a leather jacket. I'm going to link the first part in the description, so I would recommend checking that out before we hit up part 2. Anyway, in part 2, I'm going to be showing you how to paint logos on a leather jacket. All the supplies you need, the techniques I know. Specifically, I'm going to be showing you how to make a really basic stencil. And I'm also going to be showing you how to be doing this freehand technique where you use graphene to transfer your logos. So let's get right into it. So here's a basic list of supplies you're going to need. Obviously, you're going to need a leather jacket. If you watch the first part of my video series, this is the same red and black jacket I was working on. So we got our jacket. We're going to need some sort of logo, design, imagery that you want to put on your jacket. You can either print stuff off. You might have show flyers that you can cut out and turn them into stencils. You can even freehand if you're good at freehanding. I'm also going to show you how to pretty much like get away with not having a printer, where you could just transfer these with no printer. I'll show that to you in a little bit. But yeah, we got our imagery. And we're going to turn it into a stencil. I know it's a really crude stencil, but it works. Okay, so we got our image, we got our stencil. So let's get down here. You're going to need some masking tape, some really light tacky glue, a pair of scissors, a razor or an X-Acto blade, a bunch of paint pens. Now when I do logos on jackets, I only use paint pens, as opposed to when I'm actually painting up like the actual sleeves and the flats and the collars of a jacket, where I use acrylic paint. I find that acrylic paint, if you do logos with it, it just flakes off a lot more easy than using paint pens. But anyway, we got paint pens. It doesn't matter the brand, they're paint pens. We got a piece of chalk. We got a really dull pencil that's going to come in handy. And we just have 2 Sharpies just to have on hand. We also have some rubbing alcohol, and we have a little sock or a rag, something that's a piece of cloth. All right, let's get into it. So first step, regardless of whether you're making a stencil or you're just going to freehand paint onto your jacket, you're going to want to do this step where you take rubbing alcohol, or even if you have like some cheap vodka lying around, you're going to take it and kind of dab it onto a rag and just lightly wipe down the surface of the leather jacket that you're going to be painting. Now, if you watched my first video, you saw me do that already with all of the painting surfaces where the red's at. But I'm going to do it back here on the back. I'm pretty much only going to be focusing on this bottom rocker and the top part of the jacket. So I'm going to take my rubbing alcohol, my rag, going to get my little bear drunk, and we're just going to lightly wipe down the leather. Now, this is important in the long run. It helps pull out a lot of excess oils and dirt that's in this leather. It's going to make the paint stick a lot better. At least I find it does. And also, if you're getting like a secondhand leather jacket, you don't really know what's on this, if it's been spilt with like gasoline or motor oil or just dirt and vomit and sweat. But anyway, it is optional. You don't have to do this step, but I find it helps. So let's wipe it down and we'll go right into the next step, all right? Okay. So this first method I'm going to show you is actually making a stencil. Stenciling isn't my go-to method, but I'm going to show you to do it anyway. And before I go any farther, I'm going to have to let you guys know about this site called stencilpunks.org.com. It's been around a long time, and I do believe that there is a Tumblr page, Stencil Punks Tumblr, or some shit like that. I will put the link in the description below, but it's Stencil Punks is really cool because all the images are already printed out and edited to look like stencils. Like if you look at the letters, they're all ready to be cut out in stencil font, so like you don't lose your insides of your letters. Everything's just made to be a stencil, and you could just there's like hundreds There's just a shit ton of stencils to choose from. So anyway, I just thought I'd do a shout out of that. So let's get right into making a stencil. Alright guys, here is the Stencil Punks Tumblr page. And there's literally thousands of stencils already edited, so you can just print them out, cut them off. Yeah, here you go. I'll put the link in the description. Here's another blog called Shrouded in Fog. It's kind of like Stencil Punks. They have a lot of the same stencils, but there's a lot of different ones too. I'll put a link in the description for this blog site as well. Alright guys, so this is an easy way to transfer your image when you don't have a printer. You just find your image online, pull it up in a paint editing program, one where you could resize it. You're going to find the right size that you're going to want the stencil to be, or the image, or whatever you're going to make with it. And then you're going to take a piece of paper, you're going to tape it over, you're going to put it over it, and then you're going to tape it in the corner, okay? And I'll show you. So now that your paper's taped on the screen, you're going to take a pencil and lightly outline it, just real light, okay? Okay, so we have our outline done in pencil. The next step is to take a Sharpie and outline it, make it thicker. So now that we have our outline done in Sharpie, our next step is going to be to take our Scotch tape and we're going to do straight layers up and down, all the way down. I'll show you what that looks like. You're going to do the front and the back. Alright? Alright. So we got the front and back of our stencil all taped up. It's going to help keep it more rigid, more like a stencil instead of a piece of paper. The next step is we're going to cut out the actual pieces of the stencil. This is especially true when you're doing like logos or any sort of like writing, any sort of words, letters. You'd always want to be careful and leave yourself an outlet, or else you're going to like lose the whole inside of the letter. Once you start making stencils with letters, that makes a lot more sense. But this is pretty easy. It's just this Mandalorian skull. And yeah, let's get right into it and start cutting it up. All right, fantastic. We have our stencil cut out. And like I said, this is a really crude stencil. I've seen people use like actual like really thin plastic instead of doing this method with the tape. I'm just making this with what I got. You can use plastic. I've seen people use really thin cardboard. This is going to work for what we're going to do. So anyway, we have our stencil cut out. And our next step is going to be taking some really light tacky glue, preferably a glue stick. I've also heard of people, actually Living Dead Girl, her channel on here, she was using eyelash glue, that's what it's called, eyelash glue, yeah, to tack down the stencil. Tacking it down is optional. You don't necessarily have to tack it down with glue. You could just set it on there, but it does help stop the paint from bleeding out underneath the stencil. So you don't have to do it, but it does help. So anyway, that's what I'm going to do. Pretty much I'm going to just take my glue, I'm going to flip it to the back of the image. I guess it's kind of the same with this Mandalorian skull, but if it was letters, you'd obviously want to do it on the back. And we're going to just tack it around here. And then we're gonna do the whole thing, but we're just gonna get it all tacky, lay it out on the jacket. Okay, that's what I'm gonna do. I'll show you when it's on the jacket. Also, alternatively, if you don't want to use glue, this is something that I like to do instead of using glue, is I just tape it down, try to get it nice and flat. And you could use double-sided tape or even just roll up tape on itself and just try to get it as flat as possible. I've already taped down these three pieces and this, so now I got to get this nose bone piece. But with this, you're gonna have to be really careful so your paint doesn't bleed out. So just keep in mind, if you're gonna do it this way instead of tacking it down, you're gonna just want to be extra careful so your paint doesn't bleed out. So I'm gonna finish taping up underneath the nose bone, and then we'll get right into the painting process. Okay. So we got our stencil tacked down with either the glue or the tape. So we're ready to get into some paint pens. If you've never used paint pens before, there's ball bearings in here. You got to shake them up real good. And honestly, before you even touch a jacket, I would recommend that you just mess around on either a scrap piece of leather, a piece of cardboard, a piece of paper, just something. So anyway, shake them up probably for like a good 30, 40, 50 seconds. And you'll end up, there's like different types of paint pens. This is a medium tip. This big guy's a chisel tip. This is an extra fine tip. Right now I'm just going to use this medium tip. But here's another tip. Too many damn tips. Here's another tip though. I would take a piece of cardboard and use it as a palette. And just kind of like dab your paint pen out. Just because you don't want too much paint on the tip of this. Because if the tip is covered in too much paint and you touch the leather, it's just going to go blah. It's just going to be a mess. So kind of like do that every once in a while. And it just helps you out, okay? There you go. The more you know. Alright. So let's get into painting this stencil. Essentially all I'm going to do is just outline it with this medium tip. Just outline the whole image. Then I'm going to pull it off. And then we're going to go back with this chisel tip and fill it in, okay? So I'll show you when I'm done. Also, before we go too far into it, I'm just outlining it. This is just my preferred method of doing it. If you actually want to take your paint pen and just like dab it out really lightly to do this logo, you could do that too. Like with this big chisel tip, just dab it out. Just, you got to be really careful not so it doesn't bleed underneath that stencil, okay? I'm doing it this way just because that's how I do stencils. Hypothetically, if you were making a stencil with a bunch of little letters, it might be easier just to dab out a bigger paint pen over that stencil. Okay, so there we go. We're going to take this stencil off and hopefully I didn't ruin it, but it should be fine. And even if like your paint bleeds, you can always cover it with more paint. That's the cool thing about working on leather, is you can always fix your mistakes. So let's see what we got. Put that over there. So there we go. Awesome. We got, oh no, I messed up. Hey, we all make mistakes. I forgot this other part of the jaw. So I'm going to put my stencil back on. And find where I'm at. I guess it's good I'm making mistakes, so I can show you how to fix them. So you just put your stencil back on if you like miss a spot. And we're just going to take it from there. We're going to fill that in. Then we're going to take the stencil off, and I'll show you what it looks like, right? Alright. So here we are. We fixed our little mistake. And yeah, it looks really rough. But, you know, we got like a straight spot on, like 10 out of 10 how the logo is supposed to look on the leather jacket. Which is something you can't really do if you freehand, unless you're like an amazing artist when it comes to transferring. But anyway, that's why I like using stencils, because it's just like spot on the first time. Hypothetically, it's supposed to be spot on at least. Alright, so the next step is, we got our outline. We're going to fill in everything that needs to be white. Okay, so I'm going to do one layer of paint with this fat boy right here. I'm going to show you when I'm done, okay? Awesome, so here we are. It's starting to look more like a stencil. So I did the first layer of just the white paint pen. And of course I kept forgetting, I forgot that mandible piece again. Don't worry, I'll go fix that. But yeah, do one layer, let it dry decently, go back and do another layer of white. Because if you notice, like there's still a little bit of black seeping through. You don't want that. You want to be a little bit more, have more white on it. So let's do that, right? So here we are. We got our 2 layers of white. Now if you need to, you could do another layer. Or you could even just do like a spot layer, where you just go back like where it's a little bit darker. You can fill that in. I'm probably going to do another 3rd layer just on the spots where it's kind of black still coming through. But then I think we're going to call it good with the white. The next step is what I like to call the cleaning up and the detail phase. This is where we're going to come in and fix our mistakes. I do have a little bit of a smudge here. And right here, you could tell, like, it's just too close together. Same over here. So, yeah, you just want to go and, like, look over your work. Find where you can make the details sharper. And that's why, like, having these black paint markers always comes in handy. Because you're going to use the black. And I'm just going to talk about it without actually showing you. But you're going to go back. and you're just going to clean up these edges. Clean them up nice. Make sure between your lines are nice and black, I guess. You just want stuff to be more crisp, and these black paint markers really help you bring out the crispiness. Crispy critters. Anyway, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna show you when I'm done, and you're gonna be able to tell the difference. And when you're doing these details, like if you want stuff to be extra sharp, like whether it's like a letter, you just want the edge to be sharp, or just like anything, you just want to come back with the black and kind of just point it out, point it out into the, like, go over the white and make it pointed. Like I said, this is a step where you just really bring out the sharpness and the details of these edges. You just clean them up. Okay, I'm going to show you. Cool. So you can't really see it, but if you look finely in the white, you see I've done up some details with a pencil. Not too much, just a little. And like I said, these details are really going to pop. So I'm going to go in here with a fine tip black paint marker and just hit up those details, these little bit of lines. You can't really see them with the camera, but they're there. So let me do that. So there we are. A little bit of detail goes a long way. I might, if I'm feeling fancy, I might just take a white paint marker and just outline the whole thing, just to see how it looks, just to make it pop more. But yeah, you can see how the detail just makes it look a little bit better. And so yeah, let's outline it and see what it looks like. Okay, so I outlined it. It's looking pretty solid. If you want, you could probably take your design and add a little bit more details. It's whatever you feel comfortable doing, and whatever you think it needs. You know, I think I'm pretty much good for here. So we're gonna call that good. All right, let's get on to the next section of the video. Okay, guys, let's get right into the second method I was talking about, which is where you take your image and you use graphene to transfer it over, and it's pretty much freehand. And the cool thing about this method is you don't have to like have that much of artistic ability, because it relies a lot on graphene. And you'll see and you'll understand, and you might be familiar with the method. A lot of old coloring books used to have the whole like transferring an image via graphene in it. It's just a way to transfer images, and it just helps people draw if you're not the best artist. So this is something I do. It helped me out a lot when I first started painting up leather jackets, making leather jackets. Anyway, if you haven't already guessed, we are doing a Star Wars themed leather jacket, specifically the Mandalorian. We got the Mandalorian skull up there, and we have the child down here, making it for my partner. So hopefully it turns out cool. But yeah, let's get right into it, okay? So yeah, graphene is amazing, especially if you're not good at drawing. It's just going to help you out a lot. So the first thing you want to do is either print off your image, or like how I was doing earlier, where I just like trace the image off a computer screen. You can use printed images as well. I'm just cheap, so I just trace this off a computer screen. But yeah, you can go right ahead and use printed images. Any image you have, you could do this method. So the first thing you're going to want to do is we're going to make the quadrants. We're actually going to make the graph. So we're going to fold it in half one way, fold it in half another way, and then we're going to fold it in quarters this way. Okay, so I'm going to show it to you. All right, so here we go. We have our graph, our quadrants made. Now, depending on how big your image is and how much detail is in your image, you could even go smaller and fold these quadrants. Like we already had it in half. You could fold them in half again and again. You can make it 8 by 8, 16 by 16, even bigger. Okay, like depending on how much detail you have in the image you're trying to transfer. The child here is pretty straightforward. So I just did a basic 8 square, or 8 quadrant, I guess. I don't know. I suck at math. Should have went to college. But anyway, it's a really basic quadrant. And like I said, if you want to do a bigger image, a more detailed image, I would definitely recommend making more quadrants, because it just makes it a lot easier. Okay, so anyway, I'll stop rambling. We have our quadrants laid out, and when you fold it makes it all even. So it's really cool just to be able to fold it like that. So the next step, we're just going to take a like a red pen or a Sharpie or even like a highlighter, and we're just gonna like just go over the quadrants just so you see them better. It's more of like a visual, just a visual aid to have. You don't necessarily have to do it. I like to do it just for that visual aid, so I'm gonna take care of it. Awesome. So we have our quadrants drawn out. They're gone over in red so we see them better. Our next step is actually on the leather jacket. We're going to draw out the quadrants. And what I find easiest to do this is with just a piece of chalk. I kind of chiseled it down to a point. So we're just going to worry about the quadrants first. And we're going to try and find like the middle of the jacket. If you had like a straight edge ruler, that might help. Getting like that dead straight on, those straight angles. So anyway, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make our quadrants. And we're going to take it from there, okay? Look at all these squares. So yeah, we have our quadrants done up in chalk. Chalk's pretty easy to work with. It just wipes off. So just so you know, like don't slide your hand across it while you're drawing or anything, because you're going to lose all your chalk. But anyway, if you notice, I kind of switched it up a little bit. And this bottom line's more down here, the middle line, which is going to work out perfectly. Like it's like dead center how it's going to be set up. So let's get right into it. Yeah, this might look familiar to you. Like I said, like those old coloring books would have quadranting, where you take an image that's already graphed out and transfer it into a blank graph. That's exactly what we're going to do here. And it really helps out people who aren't the best at drawing, because instead of drawing a whole image at once, you more focus on one little square at a time, like one section. And that's the main benefit of quadranting, graphing, whatever you want to call it. Graphing, I guess, is the correct term. But yeah, we're just gonna follow each little square, and you can either use chalk or you can use like a really dull pencil. If you have like a really like light lead pencil, that would work too. But yeah, chalk, pencil, as long as you can see it, that's just all that matters. So I'm gonna go ahead and just transfer the child onto here, block by block, and I'll show you when I'm done, okay? Okay, here we are. We have the design very roughly drawn out with a pencil. You can either use the chalk or you can use a pencil. I like using a pencil because the lead of the pencil stays on a lot better than the chalk does. But if you want to use chalk, you can use that. Honestly, you could just use all pencil. You know, I've done both. But just with this, I just using the chalk made the graph stand out a little bit more. Anyway, we have the design. It's crudely drawn out. It's not perfect, but it's there, and you're going to be able to see it better like in the sunlight. But I could tell it's there. I'm not sure how well it's going to turn out in the video. So anyway, we got our picture up here for reference. Our next step is going to be just going to do the outline first with probably like either a medium or a fine tip white paint marker, paint pen. You know the drill. Let's get it. One thing you guys are going to want to be mindful of is if in your original image, if there's any area that's going to be solid black, you're going to want to leave that black. I mean, you don't have to, but it works out easier in the long run. I know this is just a rough drawing, but the eyes are going to be all black, so we're going to leave them black. And when you're working on black, it's easier to work outside of the outline. Like you would want to run your pen outside the outline instead of just running it directly on the outline. It's going to give you a little bit more room, and it's going to give you a little bit more detail, like how his eye duct's supposed to come down. You know, but just always be mindful of what you're doing. I know I always get distracted, mess things up, but try to be level-headed about it, you know. So we have this this extremely crude outline done. So from this point on, you could pretty much just wipe away all this excess chalk and whatnot. So we're going to wipe that excess chalk away, and the next step is we're just going to do the filler. Now, like I said, with the eyes, you're going to want to leave them black. He has these the shadow in his ears that we're also going to leave black. Down here, there's a part of the robe. You're going to leave that black. You know, just pay attention to what you're doing. And like, no matter what you're working on, you always want to pay attention, especially when it comes to letters or any sort of like in detail logo. design. Just pay attention. But yeah, we got the outline. The next step is just to fill everything in white that's supposed to be white. So here's another tip that I personally do, especially when you're working with these chisel tip Sharpies. They're kind of wide. It's kind of like using a paintbrush. Like you just do long strokes. But if you know that you're going to be working on something that has texture, like for example, the child's face is going to have like this forehead texture, like everything's going to run like along the seams of his face, the wrinkles. Like move in that direction, you know, instead of just sitting there like coloring it in like you're in grade school, like just kind of go with the flow of the image. It's going to turn out a lot better in the long run. And also, like I said, I'm filling everything in white that's supposed to be white, but you're going to be able to go back and see your original lines. Okay, so let me just finish doing everything white, finish the paws, this other side of his head, and I'll show you. Okay, here we go. We got our, it's pretty much what we have to work with. This is our base layer. Got our first layer of white. Like I said, we can see the outline still, which is important. And what I'm going to do next is just do another base layer of white. Okay, so let's do it. So we have our 2 layers of white. It's looking pretty good. And like I said before, when you work your paint, if you're working with an image that has texture, like how the child has texture in its forehead, like the lines, the wrinkles, the flow, I guess you say, it just makes sure you go along with the flow instead of just like scribbling it out. Okay, it's going to make a world of difference when we're doing the detail. But anyway, we got our 2 layers. The next step is we're going to take a pencil and we're just going to like draw out the actual details, like his nose, his face, the ears, pretty much everything that we see here. Okay, draw it out with pencil first. We'll take it from there. About halfway done, and it's looking pretty good. But this is where it's important that you can still see those the first outline we did, because you're pretty much going over the outline you originally made when you drew it on your very first layer of that outline. If you look into like, you know, the claws, the detail right here, you're always going to see that when you're doing these logos. So just go over that outline. It's going to be your friend, and just work with it, and just add some detail, you know, make it work out. I'll show you when I'm done. Okay, so yeah, we did a lot of detail. We also went back and sharpened up edges, made it more crisp with the black. Now we're going to go back with a white, probably a white fine tip paint marker. We're going to add the gloss in the eyes and a little bit more detail. And then we should be wrapping up here soon. So we're pretty much done. We had our all of our detail done. We went back a little bit of white, touched up a bit. Yeah, this is pretty much it. Hopefully you understand the concepts of transferring logos or images with the graph technique. Yeah, like I said, the graph technique helped me out a lot when I first started painting up leather jackets. And it still helps me out a lot if I'm doing highly detailed images. Like this one wasn't too detailed, but it did help. So there it is. Let me show you the whole jacket. Alright nerds, so we're pretty much done. I know this isn't your traditional punk jacket. There's no punk logos. But I've done too many damn punk jackets. I thought I'd do something different with this one. So hopefully, after you watch this video, you can understand a little bit more about painting logos onto leather jackets with this first method, with this basic stencil I did. It's pretty straightforward. And the second method, I use this for like really detailed things. This image wasn't too detailed, but I always prefer using this transfer graph method, graphing method, whatever you want to call it. It's usually my go-to. But yeah, it looks pretty good. Hopefully you learned something. You can apply it to your own jackets, your own logos, whether they're band logos, punk, metal, goth. I really don't care what logos you're putting on your jacket, but you can use all these tips and tricks that I showed you to paint your shit up. And one more thing before I go, whenever you're painting up leather jackets, whether you're like doing full colors, like I did in the first video, or even just logos, you're going to want to get yourself some clear coat and a spray can. This is Rust-Oleum brand. And when you do this, You're going to want to do a nice, even, layered coat. You don't want to sit there and like spray it on hardcore. Just a nice, even coat. Let it dry. Spray it on again. Maybe even do a third coat. This clear coat's going to make the logo stay on so it doesn't wear off in the long run. But here you go. This is me finishing up part 2. Stay tuned for part 3. I'm going to show you how to stud up a leather jacket. I'm going to show you how to make a studding tool, all the techniques I use, and just the different stud patterns and everything out there. So hopefully you stick around for that. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Send me a comment down below. And yeah, here we go. Bye!